First of all, I am super excited to be here today. I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm very excited to share with you guys my take on the 3 pillars for your success. So we'll get started with a quick agenda. I'm going to give you guys an introduction, kind of an overview of why this is different and a couple other topics. I'm going to talk in depth about what the 3 pillars are and how you can use them in your life, as well as some tools that you can apply in order to strengthen those. When I get done with that, we're going to tie it all together. Because pillars are made for building things. They're not good on their own. And then lastly, we're going to do some next steps, and there's going to be a breakout session. So first of all, I want to talk about 2 questions. Why the traditional success articles that you guys typically see don't work, and how this is different or why this is better. Okay, so for starters, most of the success articles that you guys see from Forbes or Inc. magazine or whatever, type in success on Google, and I almost guarantee you that a picture of Jeff Bezos is going to pop up because he's worth $200 billion. And the problem with that is that all these success articles want you to believe that money is equivalent to success, but it's not. It's not, I won't say money is not important, because I do believe that it is. You do need some money, but it's not the only thing that's important. And what you'll see on these articles is they'll tell you things like, I read one a few weeks ago that said, Jeff Bezos doesn't use PowerPoint. And the article is all about how, well, maybe if you don't use PowerPoint, you'll be just as successful as Jeff Bezos. I mean, that's as silly as saying that Bill Gates eats Cocoa Puffs at precisely 5:15 a.m. every morning, and if you just follow those habits, that's going to work for you too. Right? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah? So what I'm going to do is I am going to tell you that that's not true, and I'm not going to define success for you, other than to say that success is what you define and what you redefine throughout your life. Okay, so when you're 16, success is getting a driver's license. When you're 21, maybe it's going to a bar. When you're in your 30s, maybe it's getting a good job or spending time with your young family, whatever. My point is that your success will change as you get older. And as your life changes, your circumstances change, you move to a new city or whatever. So I'm not going to define success for you as an individual. You get to define that. So I'm not going to tell you what the 1% do. That's not what I'm going to focus on here. I'm going to focus on things that are 100% within your control. It is going to require some mental discipline on your part to execute on these, but everything that I'm going to talk about is 100% within your control, regardless of where you are today. I don't care what your education level is. It doesn't matter what your background is, what your marital status is, what your income level is, what your age is, what your skin color is. It does not matter. You can apply these today. The next thing I want to answer real briefly is, who is Bill Gombert? Kim gave me a great introduction, but there's one thing that I really want to highlight to everybody on the call today, and that's that I'm an average guy. There is nothing that I have accomplished that can't be accomplished by any one of you on the call. My book is not 400 pages. It's like 60. Okay, I'm not a novelist. I wrote a book. I'm average. I'm a father. I have a great wife. I got 2 young kids. I'm a normal guy. And so the pillars that I have generated here today are something that can be applied by normal people. And that's why I'm excited to share it with you guys today. So the next 2 questions are, what are the 3 pillars and what am I going to leave with? Well, the 3 pillars are mindset, people, and education. Okay, so we'll walk through those in depth, but I thought it was important to take a minute and tell you guys what you're going to be leaving with today. As much as I love these motivational conferences, what tends to happen is everyone gets real excited. We're all just amped up for about 2 days, and then it fizzles out, because the pressures of our lives continue to pile up, and we just kind of forget about the excitement that we had. And so what I want you to leave from this presentation today, what I want you to leave with is some tools. And I'm actually going to force you to put a reminder in your phone. Now, I can't actually force you to do that, but I hope you'll take that step so that after this conference is done and after you walk away, you'll have something to look back on and say, is this working for me, and am I applying this? So the first pillar is mindset. And this should come as no surprise to anybody on this call, right? That mindset is super important. We're at a motivational conference, guys. We're not here to do cardio. Okay, I'm not going to be jogging up here. You are here to sharpen your minds, right? That's what we're doing today. So you guys all know that mindset is super, super important. Life is a mental game. This guy right here, his name is René Descartes. And in 1637, he said, I think, therefore I am. I think this is a weird quote, but it's interesting. I think, therefore I am. And when I read this, I think that this is probably one of the earliest versions of perception is reality. Right? I look at this and I think, okay, I think, therefore I am. And what he was trying to do, by the way, was come up with an indisputable statement. Not the grass is green, because maybe people see the grass as different colors or the grass is different in different places. But he said, I think, therefore I am. And you know, as I grew up, I was inundated with little sayings, mental sayings, right? I grew up hearing things like, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. Your attitude determines your altitude. Or you get to choose your attitude and your response. Okay, I read books as I got older and I learned more sayings like this, right? Like, the difference between stumbling blocks and stepping stones is the way a man uses them. I love that one, personally. And things like, people make the world go round, and you are the problem, but you're also the solution. Just powerful statements like this that reinforce how powerful your mind is, right? But the thing is that most of these statements that I've just made focus on the positives of your mind, right? Your mind is so powerful, and that can be great. It can be your greatest asset, but it's also a double-edged sword. Your mind can be your greatest liability if you don't know how to control it. Now, I don't know how many of you have heard that the psychological portion of the torture, or anticipating how you're going to be tortured, is worse than the actual torture. Now, I've never tortured anyone personally, but I have tickled a toddler, and I can tell you, when I pin my daughter down and I go like this, she freaks. I don't even have to do anything, right? Her mind is doing all the work for me. Freaks her out, okay? So your mind is super powerful, and that's why it's one of these pillars. Now, I want to lay some of the groundwork here. I thought this little cartoon here, I don't know how well you guys can see it, but there's two people. They're looking at a number. One of them insists that it's a 6, and the other one says it's a 9. I guarantee you there's an argument that's going to break out here, because they see things differently, right? But that's okay. But there's something that I want to point out to you guys, and it's that perspective and perception are two very different things. So let's start with some definitions, and then I'll really dive deep on this. So a perspective is defined as a point of view. All right, these two people have different perspectives. They're looking at the same thing from different angles. Okay, perspective is typically looked at as in a spatial realm, right? Usually people think of it as a 3D point of view. If I look at this from here, it looks different than I look at it from over here. Follow me? Perception, on the other hand, is defined as a way of understanding something or way of regarding things. It is a mental impression. Okay? Now, the interesting thing about these two things is that perception is not easily changed. You can't just flip a switch and go change your perception or your mental impression of the world. And this is because your perception has been built up every day since you were born. It has been built on your family, your upbringing, the things that you were taught as a child, the way that you were brought up, maybe your geography, and all of these things build biases within you. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but you need to understand that perception is not something that you can change in the blink of an eye. Perspective, on the other hand, is far more objective, and your perspective can be changed when you choose to ask questions. In this picture here, the man that says this is a 6, instead of arguing that it's a 6, he could say, why do you see it that way? And if he is open-minded, this guy says, well, I'm looking at it right here. When I stand in this spot, this is what I see. Then you can have a discussion, and that can begin to change your perception. Yeah? Make sense? Give me some nods. I don't have people in the room, so thumbs up, something. Make sense? Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So when we talk about the tools that I want you guys to apply for mindset, I want to talk about the circle of influence. Any of you guys heard of this? Circle of influence? Stephen Covey in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, a couple. No big deal if you haven't, I'm going to explain it. Okay, and this is powerful. Okay, the circle of influence has 2 circles. This inner circle right here is called the circle of influence. And this outer circle is the circle of concern. The circle of concern is all of the things that directly impact us, but which we have no direct control. Things like the weather, our working conditions, the relationships, the impacts that people put on us. And your circle of influence is what you have direct control over. Your actions, your physical responses, your thought, your emotions. And Stephen Covey had pointed out that when you're focused on the circle of concern, you are in a reactive state. And your circle of influence begins to shrink. You're just, everything is, oh, poor me. It's crushing me. I'm down and down and down. And pretty soon, if you focus on those things that you cannot control, you will be left in the fetal position on the floor with no power because you've given all of it away. He says when you focus on the circle of influence, this gives you an opportunity to take control of what you can control. Focus on what you can control. And you'll feel better. So I'm going to give you an example. It's raining today, right? So let's pretend you have to go out to your mailbox. And your mailbox is far. I don't know why it's 100 yards away, but just bear with me. It's 100 yards away. So going to get your mail is going to be a big pain. Okay? You can look at that in one of 2 ways. You can focus on the circle of concern and say, oh, it's raining. Oh, I don't want it to be raining. And then you trudge outside. I'm cold. I'm wet. I just don't like that it's raining. And before you know it, you are on the floor. And nobody did it to you except for yourself. This is your mind. Your other option is to say, it's raining outside. Not ideal. My mailbox is way too far. I really should do something about that. But I can dress for the conditions. I can bring an umbrella. No big deal. I'll just go get my mail because I need to get it today. There's an important package. You have decided to take control. And when you do that, you feel great, right? You have done exactly what you needed to do. And you feel good about it. But the thing is, the situation didn't change there. Nothing changed. Except for your perspective. You decided to focus on what you can control. It didn't stop raining, but you dealt with it. And I want to point out something here too that I think is important. Even someone such as myself who believes that I'm relatively aware of the circle of concern and the circle of influence and how I need to focus on what I control, I still occasionally fall into the trap of the circle of concern and focusing on negative things that I have no control over. This happened to me about a year ago. We had that big rainstorm and my basement flooded. I got 2.5 inches of water in the basement. The carpet's ruined. The water's coming in through the sump pump. I called the plumber in time. He couldn't fix it. So I'm just watching as my basement is filling with water. And I'm freaking out. I'm going, oh, the furniture, the walls, the carpet. No. And my daughter, 3 years old, puts on her rain boots. She goes downstairs. And she sees that I am just like losing my mind. And she goes, it's okay, Daddy. It's just an accident. Accidents happen. Hey, watch this. And she just starts splashing. She's having a great time. I, who know better, am focused on the circle of concern. And she's 3. And she's like, cool, no big deal. I'm going to put my rain boots on. We're going to get this done. Don't worry about it, Dad. It's fine. So it's okay to fall into that every now and then. But I'm going to give you a trick to help you get out of that cycle. And this is the superpower that I call reframing your circumstances. Ask questions. Remember I said you can change your perspective and thereby influence your perception? You do this through asking questions. Asking questions like, what's the real challenge here? What am I doing to contribute to make this challenge worse or to make it better? Why do I feel this way? What am I feeling? And it's important to ask these questions in different ways because the way that you phrase the questions and the language that you use can change how you view that question. It's very, very impactful. If you guys want to know more about that, I highly recommend a book called The Road Less Stupid by Keith J. Cunningham. Now, it's a little bit more business focused, but he talks about the importance of thinking time in business. And he said that the reason that we give the wrong answers or that we get to the wrong conclusions is not because we give the wrong answers, it's because we've asked the wrong question. And again, that book is by Keith J. Cunningham. It's called The Road Less Stupid. Another question you need to ask yourself is, what's the big picture, right? Zoom out. Zoom way out. I already heard Tim talk about how much of a pain this pandemic is. I agree. This is a giant pain in my neck. I've got a very young family and it just stinks. We can't go to the zoo. There's all kinds of new restrictions. It's kind of yucky. Okay, I'm not really a big fan. Zoom out. What's the big picture? A couple years from now, this is going to be an uncomfortable memory. We are going to make it. And lastly, how can I turn this challenge, this struggle, into an opportunity? An opportunity for learning, an opportunity for growth. How do you turn it into an opportunity? So, application. Here's what I want you to do. The first thing you have to do is identify a bad mindset. Identify when you are not in control. You feel frustrated, you feel angry, lethargic, you have a lack of motivation to go do something that you know you need to go do. You are not in control. You need to recognize that. And again, it's okay to find yourself not in control. That happens. That's being human. My daughter, she's 4 now, she got stung by a bee last weekend while she was swinging. About 5 minutes into the ordeal, we had ice on it. She's doing fine, but she is still crying. And she tells me, "Daddy, I don't think I'm going to make it." Life is like that sometimes. It's okay. You're going to get stung by a bee. But you should recognize that. You're old enough to know better. You've identified that mindset. The next thing you need to do is do not react. Slow down and think. The problem with reactions is that they are typically, you lash out. It's an emotional response. Somebody hurls an insult at you, what do you want to do? Pah! You want to pop them. Not a good idea. Okay, you need to stop and think. Slow down for a minute. And the last thing you need to do is use that superpower. Reframe your circumstances. Ask questions and be honest with yourself. Ask those questions in a couple different ways. But you have to be honest with yourself. That's where the breakthroughs are going to come. So the next pillar that we're going to talk about is people. Again, no surprise. I'm not telling you guys things here that are new information, right? You all know that people are important. So why are you here today, right now? On the other side of that camera, you are here because someone told you about the conference. Whether it was you found it online, or Kim told you about it, or Kurt, or me, or anybody else. You are here because somebody told you about it. Somebody wants you to get benefit out of this conference. They want to help you. Maybe they want an accountability buddy for some of the things that they're going to learn. They want to be able to network or whatever, but they told you because they wanted to help you. And that's why you're here on this planet. I'm zooming way out now. I think I just answered the reason for our existence. We're here to help other people, right? That's what we're here for. And it's important that you help other people, right? And you can do that in so many different ways. It doesn't matter what your job is. You're here to help people. And you should always be trying to find ways to help people. And that's what I've decided was built on, which I think is awesome. You are here to help people. No business was ever built, no fortune ever amassed, and no lasting success was ever found if it was not for the value that was created for people. And I don't care if you feel like your goal is to help wildlife, that ultimately helps people. I can take literally anything and pull that back to how you're helping other people, and that leads you to feeling fulfilled. That's what this is. And you must not take people for granted. You can't afford to do that. You cannot do this life thing alone. When I think about people, there are two things that I think about. One of those is the power of relationships. And this obviously is powerful, right? We have all heard the phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Kurt and Kim, they know a guy or a gal, right? They know people, and that's great. It's important to know people, but I think so often we hear, well, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and people put that in a negative spin, right? They're like, oh, God, well, his brother-in-law is actually the CEO, so that's why he got the job. But the thing is, guys, like, you should be looking for relationships. You should be asking, who can I help? And who can help me? How do I reach up or over or down and help somebody up? How can I help them? And it's funny, it doesn't matter what your education level is. You can help anybody, right? Some of you guys may not know, this is kind of an obscure story, but Henry Ford, you guys heard the name? Mm-hmm. Henry Ford, you know who he is? Yeah, okay, so here's the deal. He actually sued the Chicago Tribune in the early 1900s for slander because they said he was ill-educated. When he took the stand, they were hurling questions at him about American history, and he couldn't answer them. He actually was not a very formally educated man. But when they started grilling him on this stuff, he said, why would I need to know all of those things when I can push a button and call to me someone who knows the answer? When I can leverage experts, why would I need to know all that? Guys, the amount of data that we are dealing with today, we cannot be an expert on everything. We absolutely should be leveraging relationships, right? And that's the point. And because of those relationships, people accelerate one another, right? Our diversity is the key advantage of humans, right? That's our advantage, and with so much talk about diversity today, and I'm not going to dive down this particular wormhole other than just a little bit, but in 2020, diversity is a major buzzword. We are talking about it nonstop all the time, and I think that's great, except that I think the unfortunate part is that we stop short of what the goal of diversity is. We put people in boxes, and we say, well, this person looks like this, or doesn't look like this, or is different by this way or that way. And instead, what we should be looking at is, how is that person cognitively different? How do they view the world differently than me? And you can get those differences through the physical differences that I just mentioned. You absolutely can, and you should. Because a lot of times when you do have those physical differences, you come from a different background, you come from a different place, you understand different things, and that's important. But the real power is not that I've got a blue alien and a purple sheep with me, so I must be diverse, and that's great. If they're not bringing any cognitive difference to the discussion, you're not going to progress, right? So it's that cognitive difference, and again, you can get that through these physical differences. But I believe that the cognitive differences that people have from the experiences that they have, that's what gives you true power and give you such an opportunity for learning and mindset changes, right? That is the power. And you guys might notice I'm starting to interweave mindset and education into my pillars here. They're all tied together. We'll talk about that more later. And I truly believe that immense success comes from creating positive relationships. Negative relationships will not help you get anywhere. It has to be positive relationships, and those relationships can be very powerful. The second thing that I want to talk about when I think about people is the power of understanding. Have any of you guys ever felt misunderstood? Maybe by your parents when you were 14, they didn't like your music, right? Everyone at some point in their life has felt misunderstood. And how did you respond to that? How did you feel? Not very good. Nobody likes to be misunderstood. It's alienating. It's frustrating. You feel left out. Nobody wants to be misunderstood. And when you are misunderstood, how do you feel about that particular person who you feel has misunderstood you? You don't like them very much, do you? Not at all. Well, it's their fault, and I can't believe they don't understand me, and all this negative stuff that comes with feeling misunderstood. So you need to be aware of that and make sure that that feeling doesn't exist most of the time in the relationships that you're in. You will never get someone's attention unless you can speak their language. If you don't understand what their perspective or their perception is, you're going to have a really hard time providing value to them in any form because you don't know where they're coming from. Now, in my line of work, I'm a salesman. Okay, I didn't used to be. I have an engineering degree and all that good stuff. But I work with people in different silos at some very large companies. I deal with executives in purchasing, engineering management, and business people. And all of those people, even though they're part of the same organization trying to achieve the same goals, they have different metrics that they're evaluated on. They have different pain points and different priorities. And it's important for me to understand that so that I can help them the best. If I go into the engineering team and I try to sell them on what purchasing wants, I'm not going to get anywhere. Dale Carnegie, in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, called that bait the hook to suit the fish. Now, some people don't like that saying because it sounds manipulative, but the truth of the matter is his point was you need to understand where other people are coming from. And frankly, I think we could use a lot of that in 2020. So taking the time to understand someone builds trust, and that helps you build relationships. This becomes a circular reference, okay? So you need to ask questions to understand somebody else's perspective in order to bolster your understanding. Now, when we talk about tools and application for pillar number 2, people, there's a couple things that you can do. And the first one is be genuinely curious. This is not hard, guys. This is like making friends in grade school. You want to get to know somebody, understand what their passions are, what they like, what they're trying to accomplish, and build those relationships and see how you can help one another. And I learned something when I was in grad school. I took a course on consulting. And the professor there, he made an interesting comment. He said, in the line of work that I am in, I am not the technical expert. I don't have the expertise to just give them an answer. They already have it, either within the group or within their minds. He says, I just have to go fishing for it. And that's what you're doing when you're being curious. But he gave me a tool. It's a 3 steps. Listen, restate, and clarify. That's it. That's how he built his whole consulting career, is based on those 3 things. It's probably slightly more complex with that, but that's how he framed it for us. So when you're talking to someone, listening is pretty straightforward. You know how to do that. Restating and clarifying, a lot of people miss, right? So if someone tells you that they're say a financial planner, and you restate that, and you say, oh, so you're a financial planner? They're going to look at you like, were you not listening? The trick is to restate, not repeat. You're not a parrot. So you restate that in your own words to show that you've understood that. If someone says, I'm a financial planner, you say, oh, that's cool. So you help people get their fiscal priorities in order. Does that say I've understood what you just told me? Yes? And then you move on to clarifying. You say, do you have a narrow or a broad focus? And this is where you start to get momentum. You start to build traction. Now, there's a man by the name of Phil M. Jones, who's a famous salesman in the UK. And he says that the person who is in control of a conversation is the one who is asking questions. And I think that's interesting, but I want to take it a step further and explain to you why I believe the person asking questions is in control of the conversation. And that's because the person asking questions is the one with the opportunity to learn. Oh, I just tied it to the education one again. You guys are seeing me do this, right? The next thing you need to do when you think about people is evaluate your relationships. In the relationships that you are in, either with somebody else or someone's in a relationship with you, are you adding value to that relationship? Are you helping those people? Are you a partner or a parasite? We talked about the circle of concern and how if you focus on everything that's external and it just crushes you down, this is no different. If you are constantly taking from people, you take and you take and you take, they're not going to want to hang out with you anymore because you're not adding value to them. You are stealing from them. You're not a partner, you're a parasite. Nobody likes a parasite. So when you think about your relationships, you should always be asking yourself, am I adding value? Am I helping this person? Am I being a good listener? And value comes in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes value is just sitting down, zipping your lip, and being a sounding board. That's value. The next thing is you need to go deeper than metrics. And I think this is so important with where we are today and where we're headed in the future, because so much data is being shoveled at us from every angle, especially those of us in leadership positions. We've got all these technologies coming online like Industry 4.0 and digital factories and 5G and all this stuff that's creating these massive amounts of data. The problem with that is that people will start making decisions based on that data without understanding the personal repercussions of those decisions. So imagine for a minute that you are in a business and you get a report that says that the production is failing on Susie or whatever. And you say, oh my gosh, the production's failing. We need to make these 4 changes right now. And you just take your spreadsheet and you spit it back into the system. And then Susie gets a notification that says, you got to make all these changes. How do you think Susie's going to feel? Where instead what you should be doing is focusing on the people and getting up and saying, hey, Susie, I see this report and it says these things. The way I read this, it says this. Do you see something different? Do you have a different perspective? You might find out she's going through a nasty divorce or somebody passed away, and so her performance is suffering. That's not a cause for freaking out. That's a cause for, oh my God, how can I help you? What do you need? Focus on people, and I promise you, you are going to be more successful. And the last pillar is education, and this is super important. All these pillars, I love each one of them individually. They're so important. I was exposed to this quote a couple months ago, and that quote is, the illiterate of the 21st century are not those who cannot read and write. It will be those who cannot learn, relearn, and unlearn. I want you to think about that for a minute. It is those who cannot learn, relearn, and unlearn. Does this make sense? You guys ever heard that? I mean, that just, to me, show me your hearts. I need some feedback. Let me know. But this day and age, we are constantly being bombarded with new technology. Now, this Alvin Toffler is an American futurist. He's considered an expert on digital disruption, right? So he focuses on this digital stuff. And so when he says it's about our ability to learn, relearn, and unlearn, you look at your cell phone. You switch cell phones and you're like, oh, I got a new operating system. I switched from an Android to this Macintosh and I don't know what to do. Your car, every time you get a new car, there's a new infotainment system. You got to learn it all over again. And this stuff is just going to accelerate. I mean, everything is moving so fast. You have to be willing to learn. Now, the interesting thing about education and technology is that we are now being inundated with all kinds of new opportunities for education. And these avenues for learning continue to pop up, right? You've got your standard opportunities like college, okay, or formal education. That's what most people think of when they think of education. They think grade school. And most of us have gone through that. No big deal. There's nothing inherently wrong with grade school. Been around for a long time. College, same thing. Then you've got things like this: seminars, motivational conferences, where you are learning from other people in that environment. Those are typically smaller groups. You can learn a lot from them. You can network, do all kinds of things. Tons of opportunities for learning in those smaller settings. There's also opportunities for learning from books. Who doesn't love a good book? I know I do. You can also learn from experience. Now, I want to clear something up because I think a lot of people look at this and, I literally Googled wise man, and this is what popped up. Okay? The challenge is that people assume that with age comes wisdom. It's not really true, is it? If you're not willing to learn, if you don't have the right mindset, if you're not constantly educating yourself, relearning and unlearning, you're not going to be wise. You're going to be outdated. And experience can be a phenomenal teacher, but it's awfully slow. And I'm willing to bet that most of us have learned a lot of things without direct experience. Anybody ever go to a bonfire, shove your hand in the bottom of the coals and see if it hurts? No, because your parents told you it was hot. Right? You don't, no, I'm good. I don't need to experience that firsthand. So when someone tells you you need to get more experience, I would challenge you to say, what makes you say that? Or what is it specifically that I would need to learn in order to get some exposure to this to save me some time? Because I don't want to wait till I'm 104 to understand how this is put together. Right? And the other one, this is our new age avenue here. Smart devices. Bit of a rabbit hole, guys. Smart devices are awesome. I love me some smart devices, okay? They have some unique challenges, and I'm going to get into that in a minute, but smart devices are great. You can get answers to all kinds of things. My daughter loves the Google that we have, right? She says, hey, smart device, what's the weather? She thinks she's hot stuff. She's getting answers to that, right? And all the questions that she asks are pretty benign. Hey, smart device, what do cheetahs eat? No big deal. You're going to get a straight answer out of that. Fun fact, if you ask Google what sound a kangaroo makes, it doesn't know. So someone at Google's got to get on that. But when you're asking objective questions to smart devices or looking for that information, it's pretty easy to get the right information, but there are hidden biases in the sources that you find. So you got to be careful about that. And I'll go in depth in that in a minute. But these are all the avenues that you have for learning. And they're going to continue to expand as technology and speed increase. Now, when we talk about the tools and application of education, I firmly believe that you need to be open to learning. You need to ask, what can I learn here? From anytime, anywhere, and from anybody. You are not the smartest person in the room. I absolutely hate that saying. That says, I know everything. No, you don't. And nobody likes a know-it-all. Okay, if you are super educated, say you've got a doctorate in quantum physics, and you're in a room with a welder and a plumber, you can say, I am the most educated on quantum physics. But you cannot say, I am the smartest person in the room, because that means that you are not open to learning, and that you can't learn something from a welder and a plumber, which just is not the case. There are learning opportunities all around you. You just have to be open to them. Fail. Now, I didn't put periods in between this on accident. That was done on purpose. It's okay to fail. And I realize this bleeds over a little bit into mindset. But my wife introduced me to something. She's a fifth grade teacher, and she said in the education system, they have an acronym for FAIL. And it's First Attempt in Learning. I thought it was pretty cool. My dad used to say to me when I was a kid, well, you can't learn any younger. The first time he told me, I was like, what are you talking about? I could have learned this younger. I was smart enough to learn this a year ago, 2 years ago. But his point was, you've never been exposed to this before. Yesterday's gone. It's over. You can't do anything about yesterday. You can learn it today and move forward, and it's okay to fail. That was your first attempt. Learn something and move forward. And then be aware of bias in where you're learning from. I talked about smart devices a little bit. And the challenge with the smart devices and the communities that we join online is that a lot of times we gravitate towards people with similar mindsets to us. Right? I'm an X. I want to hang out with the X's. I like the X's. I like the information they're saying. I agree with everything they're saying. Well, nope, I'm a Y. I like everything that Y's are saying. It's a 6. It's a 9. It's a 6. This is where you have to be aware of the information that you're getting. It's so important to understand your own biases within your own perception. And it's difficult. It's hard. And your smart device is making it harder. Every one of you's got a cell phone. Most of you, right? You got a smartphone, and it's pushing information to you. I can say, hey, smart device, good morning. And it will tell me the weather. It will give me news sources that I can choose, or it can choose for me. And I'm being fed this information. The challenge with this is that it gives you two biases that you're mostly unaware of, one of which is the confirmation bias. It says, I'm really only looking for things that already agree with what I agree with. I love the 11th Amendment. So the 11th Amendment is all you're going to get information on, usually from other people that like the 11th Amendment. And so that confirmation bias also works against you, and your phone is feeding you that information, and it gives you what's called the availability bias. Because that information is available, you don't seek other information. And that's dangerous. There's a book called The Art of Thinking Clearly that breaks down these biases pretty succinctly. It's a great read. Again, that's the art of thinking clearly, but he talks about these biases in depth. And these are just two that come up when you're using smart devices, right? So here's the deal. You got to tie this all together. Pillars by themselves are not particularly interesting. You're supposed to build something with them. Okay? On their own, these pillars they're okay. There's nothing wrong with that. The mindset pillar, we talked about a couple of awesome things. It's a great pillar. We talked about control what you can't control. Ask questions. And it's okay to get stung by a bee. It's going to happen. But when you recognize it, shift your perspective and reframe. You use that superpower, you ask those questions, and you reframe. Mindset, awesome pillar. It's fantastic. But an optimist alone does not succeed. And if you're not open to education, you are going to be outdated, outpaced, and you'll be a know-it-all. And nobody likes hanging out with a know-it-all.
Amen.
The next pillar is people. Great pillar. We love people. We talked about how you need to help people. That's why you're here. You should be connecting with people and building relationships and building them up. That's what you're here for. People is a great pillar. But by itself, it's not enough. A people pleaser who isn't willing to learn and doesn't have the mindset for application is nothing more than a party animal. Entertaining, but not particularly useful. You outgrow them very quickly. And education, another awesome pillar. We talked about how you should always be open for learning, anytime, anywhere from anybody. We talked about how you need to be aware of the hidden biases, especially in today's technology-driven economy. And I'm going to drop another little nugget on you. Knowledge is not power. The application of knowledge is power. If you have the knowledge and choose to do nothing with it, it's no good to you. It's no good to anybody. The education pillar, also a great pillar. But if you don't use that education to help people, what's the point? And if you aren't willing to apply that knowledge, it's no good anyway. So until you tie these together, you're not going to get anywhere. And when you tie these together, that's when you will be successful, however you define it. Moving forward, I want you guys to take out your phone, okay? Pull it out, open up your calendar, put a reminder in there. And I don't care when you put this reminder. You could put it in a week from now, 2 weeks from now, make it recurring, whatever. But I want you guys to take a minute, take this small step right now, take 2 minutes and put a reminder in your calendar and call it 3 pillars. And I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. The first question is looking in the rearview mirror. Are you applying these 3 pillars? Mindset, people, education. Are you using them? The next question I need you to ask is, can you apply them moving forward into the next week, month, year, whatever? And the last thing you need to ask yourself is it working? Am I generating any breakthroughs? Is there anything new that I'm learning? And let me know. I need to know. I want to know. You guys can connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel. It's brand new. I opened it like last week. I post content a couple times a week, but I am constantly putting stuff out there. I want to help people, but I need to know if these are being applied in your life and if it's working for you. So please shoot me a note. Let me know. And as you guys go into the breakout session, yep, I want you to think about this. What are you struggling with right now? And how could applying these pillars generate a breakthrough? What challenge are you facing? How could you change your mindset or your perspective? What people can help you? And what opportunities for learning are right in front of you if you would just take it? Thank you guys so much.